to probe ongoing construction scandal at Hong Kong Station. Protests mark task force on land supply's first public hearing. And China slaps tariffs against the United States in retaliation for Washington's decision to impose new levies.
Good evening and welcome to TVB News. Police are now investigating the construction scandal at Hong Kong Station following a request from the Highways Department. This follows an incident report the government received yesterday, which highlighted conflicting accounts between the main contractor and a subcontractor on how steel bars were cut short. For a second day, the MTR Corporation chairman dodged public press briefings. He only commented on questionable construction works at Hong Kong Station during a radio show this morning. We have no statutory power, so you can imagine the difficulties when legal consultants of other firms advised against their workers from speaking on this, he said. Yesterday, the MTRC's 46-page incident report failed to explain who decided to cut short steel bars connecting the diaphragm walls and platform slab supporting train tracks. Interviewees from Leighton, the main contractor, apparently had no direct knowledge of steel bars cut short. Yet, two workers from subcontractor Fang Shun said they cut the bars on some occasions and as requested by Leighton. China Technology, another subcontractor, has been silenced in the report. The firm hit back today. It's unhappy the MTRC secretly shared their statements with authorities, which would turn their accounts into hearsay evidence omitted in criminal proceedings.
Ridiculously, the whistleblower statement, which is the one from China Tech, was not mentioned at all. China Tech actually sent them an email with pictures showing workers in Leighton uniform cutting the bars. If you don't call that evidence, then I wonder what kind of evidence did Fang Shun and Leighton give MTR to warrant them putting their statement into this report.
The scandal, it seems, is far from over. Commissioner of Police Stephen Low confirmed the Kowloon West Regional Crime Unit has now taken charge. That's as the rail operator has another incident report to submit next week. This time on a concrete wall at the Sha Tin to Central Link's To Kwa Wan station that deviated from the original design. It's been shaved thin by as much as 1/5.
A government-appointed task force on land supply held its first public forum today. Options from developing the Fanling Golf Course to releasing more land in the new territories were discussed. And as Kana Chu reports, protesters were determined to make their views loud and clear to the government.
Ahead of today's public forum, dozens of protesters voiced their demands outside the venue. They urged the government to take back the Fanling Golf Course for building public flats. The group presented a petition to the task force's chairman Stanley Wong, urging him to reflect their opinions to the government. Debate on land options continued at the forum. This man, who lives in the Fanling neighborhood, noted that the golf course is a historically rich place with many facilities. But this lady questioned whether the golf course can really help make the sport more popular. This man thinks the government should focus on the problematic small house policy. Stanley Wong, chairman of the task force, noted the ideas are still at a conceptual stage. Opinions on different land options collected today will be reflected to the government. Even though the forum attracted around 150 participants, not everyone was happy with how things went. Some slammed its lack of focus during the discussion.
We don't see a lot of discussion about how do we want Hong Kong to develop, what are the priorities, and what are the criteria we should use to evaluate the different options.
3 more public forums will be held before August. The next one will be in July, but registration details are not available at the moment. Kena Chu, TVB News.
A reminder from the police chief to those of you planning to attend the annual July 1st rally. Stick to the starting point at Victoria Park, not East Point Road. Otherwise, it may be considered unlawful assembly by police.
I know that the organizer wish to start their procession on 1st of July at the East Point Road. The best rendezvous point is Victoria Park. Because East Point Road is narrow, we have a big, strong advice to all the organizers. And I also appeal to the public to not commence their procession at East Point Road. This will not only endanger the public safety, but also the safety of themselves.
China fired back at the US overnight, announcing tariffs on up to $50 million worth of American goods, including soybeans, electric cars, and whiskey. The move is in retaliation to US tariffs on Chinese goods. Alan Buckner reports.
The tariffs were announced on state television, which said it's deeply regrettable that the U.S. changed on the consensus reached between the two sides to stir up a trade war. It said the whole world will be picking up the bill for the U.S. acts of unilateralism. The Commerce Ministry said it's scrapping the deals reached to narrow the trade deficit with the U.S., which would have seen China purchasing more American farm goods, natural gas, and other products. Experts on trade say U.S. President Donald Trump's move looks set to cause more harm than good.
The president has said he has to address the bilateral trade deficit. That's economic nonsense. There's no justification there. He's also said he's concerned with Chinese intellectual property practices. That's a legitimate concern, but these measures are very unlikely to do anything to fix that problem.
In reality, it's kind of a game of whack-a-mole. What'll happen is a U.S. trade deficit will just grow with some other country because the source of our trade deficit is really the lack of domestic savings. It's not trade with China.
As of July 6th, Beijing will slap an additional 25% tariff on 545 products, including soybeans, electric cars, and bourbon whiskey. Most of the products are farm goods, hitting Trump's rural supporters. Beijing appears to be trying to minimize the impact on its own economy by picking U.S. products that can be replaced by imports from other suppliers, such as Brazil, Canada, and Australia. China's tariffs mirror those announced by Trump, which initially sent stock markets tumbling before bouncing back. The Dow closed just 0.3% down. But the Commerce Ministry did leave some room for further negotiations, saying, given the frequent flip-flopping of the Trump administration, it's still too early to conclude a trade war will start. Alan Buckner, TVB News.
U.S. President Donald Trump says it's unfair. A federal judge has revoked house arrest and jailed Trump's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, over accusations of witness tampering in special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. The fall of a Washington insider. Paul Manafort was already under indictment for alleged money laundering and other charges. This time he was in court accused of witness tampering. And this time he wasn't going home afterward.
Manafort, are you going to visit Paul in prison?
As Manafort's wife was escorted out of court, her husband was escorted to jail.
Yet to be seen what impact this will have on his calculus of whether or not he should reach out to prosecutors and perhaps try to make some kind of deal. Now, why that matters for the president, it's yet to be seen.
Meanwhile, Trump now says he supports immigration legislation backed by Republican congressional leaders. Yesterday, Trump ignited confusion over efforts to push immigration through the House next week, saying he wouldn't sign a moderate package. Under his zero-tolerance policy announced by the Attorney General, all cases of illegal entry are now being referred for criminal prosecution.
We're going to restore the rule of law in our immigration system. Our goal is to reduce and ultimately end illegal immigration. So we're not hostile to immigration. We're not against immigration. We're not trying to punish good people who want to come here in a lawful way. We simply are responding to the decent concerns of the American people to end the lawlessness.
In case anyone has forgotten, they control the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. So how they place blame on others is typical of their unprofessional attitude. They never want to take responsibility. And they know this is shameful, so they're passing it on to others.
And still to come tonight, a call on the government to implement more family-friendly policies to allow fathers to spend more time with their children.
Back to TVB News. Well, Father's Day is tomorrow, and some local groups are calling for more family-friendly policies to help dads spend more time with their kids. Pinky Wong has more.
How do you usually spend the weekends with your families? This kid hopes his dad can go cycling with him. But it doesn't happen often, as his father, Mr. Tang, has inflexible working hours. The Democratic Alliance for the Betterment and Progress of Hong Kong, or DAB, surveyed around 590 working fathers last week on their family relationships. Around 40% of them spend less than an hour a day with their children. Around a third of the fathers surveyed said their kids even complained about that.
Less than 1 hour, we cannot imagine what kind of communicate can take in 1 hour. Such a time is too short.
Long working hours, around 10 hours a day, are to blame. The DAB is urging the government to implement a 5-day work week and flexible working hours for all local workers. In addition, the group has also suggested that schools hold a work experience day for kids to learn more about their father's work. As for parents-to-be, the Federation of Trade Unions, or FTU, wants the government to implement full pay maternity leave and extend that by 4 weeks to 14.
The 14 weeks maternity leave is the suggestion from the World Labour Organization. I think the employers should pay more concern and also sympathy to their staffs.
That they hope will also help fathers get even more paternity leave in the future. Thank you all. TVB News.
A man was injured after the windows of 4 vehicles were shattered by a burst pipe in Chunwan. Salt water could be seen gushing out from a burst pipe across traffic lanes. That broke the windows of 3 buses and a truck. The incident happened at Yongok Road in Chunwan, where construction work is underway. One person later sought treatment in hospital for hand injuries.
Health Chief Sophia Chan is repeating the government's plans to create a smoke-free Hong Kong. Now, that won't be achieved by banning all tobacco or e-cigarettes, but by regulating them.
This is our first step. Of course, we will continue to monitor the situation in terms of international regulations, eventually arriving at decreasing our smoking prevalence and ultimately a smoke-free Hong Kong.
Chief Executive Carrie Lam continued her visit in Belgium and met more European Union officials.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much.
In a meeting with Jean-Claude Juncker, President of the European Commission, she expressed hopes for more youth exchanges with EU countries, such as the working holiday schemes. The pair also talked about trade and investment opportunities. And that's before a visit to a pharmaceutical company's headquarters. The CE will head to France later today.
A major fire has ravaged one of Scotland's architectural gems. The inferno also spread to neighboring properties and led to several evacuations. It took more than 120 firefighters to put out the blaze. No casualties were reported. The cause is not yet immediately clear.
building in which the fire started has been extensively damaged in fire. It has reached from the ground floor right through to the roof. It is significantly damaged. We were focusing our attention to preventing it from spreading. It did spread to nearby cinema, but we have managed to put a stop on that.
An Australian man and his live-in girlfriend have been sentenced to life in prison in the Philippines for human trafficking and rape. 55-year-old Peter Scully was convicted of 75 counts, many of them involving young girls that were sexually abused. Prosecutors said Scully made videos of the crimes, sold them to European clients and posted them on pornographic websites. He faces another 69 charges related to child pornography. The former businessman fled Melbourne in 2011 to escape fraud charges. Saudi-led forces in Yemen say they've seized control of the airport held by rebels in the port city of Hodeidah. Dozens injured in the fighting were rushed to a nearby hospital. International aid groups and the United Nations cautioned the Saudi-led coalition that supports the exiled government not to launch the assault. Their fear is that a protracted fight could force the shutdown of Hodeidah seaport at a time when a halt to aid coming in risks tipping millions into starvation. The Saudi-led coalition, however, says it had no choice because the port provides millions of dollars for the Houthi rebels through customs controls. And that's the news.
Good night.